The mountains of Prime cut into the sky like broken teeth. Snow never touched these peaks because the dragons that lived here burned too hot, and the air around their academy of scales rippled with constant heat. It was a world built for one purpose: to make dragons into weapons. Was small for his age, even though he was already 10 seasons old. His bronze scales caught the morning light as he stood in formation with 30 other young dragons. They were arranged in rows on the black stone platform, wings folded tight against their bodies. The instructors hated weakness, and showing struggle was weakness. The master of the hatchlings, an old dragon named, walked between the rows. His scales were dark red, almost black with age. When he spoke, his voice came out like rocks grinding together. "The galaxy waits to be taken," said, his words the same as they had been every morning for the past 5 years. "Every other species watches us with hunger in their eyes. They want what we have. They want our strength, our territory, our power. We must be ready to destroy them before they destroy us." The young dragons did not move. They had learned not to move. Sister Lyra stood 3 positions to his right. She was 13 seasons old and already larger than most dragons her age. Her scales were a bright red that showed her royal bloodline. She believed everything taught without question. She believed that all species outside dragon territory were enemies. She believed that mercy was a sickness that weak dragons carried. "Today," continued, "we will practice the crushing dive. You will dive at those rocks and hit them with the full weight of your bodies. The ones who hesitate will repeat the exercise until their wings burn with pain." The young dragons moved to the cliff edge. Below them, massive boulders were scattered across the ravine floor. Had watched other dragons die during this exercise. They misjudged the distance, or their bodies were not strong enough to handle the impact, or fear made them turn away at the last moment. Dead dragons were left where they fell. The masters said their weakness was being cleaned from the bloodline. Lyra launched first, her wings spreading wide and powerful. She dove straight down, faster. The wind screamed past her body. She hit a boulder and the sound was like thunder. Her impact cracked the stone. She pulled up and circled back, landing hard on the platform. Her body shook, but she showed no pain. Waited his turn. He looked at the old dragon's cold eyes and felt the weight of expectations pressing down on him. The small dragons rarely survived this exercise. The small dragons rarely survived anything. He jumped. The fall took his breath away. His wings caught air and suddenly he was flying, no longer falling. The rocks came closer. He picked his target, a medium-sized boulder, and pulled his wings in tight. The speed increased. The wind was cold on his scales. His heart felt like it was going to break through his chest. He hit the boulder and pain exploded through his entire body. His left shoulder took most of the impact. He felt something tear, felt the snap of smaller bones breaking. The world went white with pain. He crashed to the ground in a heap of twisted wings and aching limbs. Looked down at him with no expression. "Again," the old dragon said. Did not get up, his shoulder was broken. His left wing would not move properly. Walked closer, his massive claws clicking on the stone. "You cannot be serious," said. "A little pain stops you. This is exactly why your bloodline produces failures. You lack the strength of true dragons." Pushed himself up. The pain was everywhere now. He climbed back to the platform, each movement agony. His body moved because it had been trained to move, because stopping meant something worse. He jumped again. The second impact on the same boulder sent him spinning through the air. He landed badly, his wing folding beneath him. The other young dragons watched. None of them helped. None of them would dare. Showing emotion about another dragon's suffering was weakness too. That was the world they lived in. The next morning was sent to the flight duties despite his injuries. Believed pain was a teacher. Pain taught dragons to be hard. Pain taught them that the world was cruel, that mercy did not exist, that survival meant being the strongest and the fastest and the most willing to hurt. Flew with the other young dragons on patrol over the lower mountains. His shoulder ached with every wing beat. His left wing did not catch air the same way, but he flew. That was when the ship fell from the sky. It came down fast, burning as it dropped. The dragons saw it happen and scattered. The ship was not military. It was not the kind of vessel that belonged to the dragon kingdoms. It was alien. It was an invader. The burning wreckage hit the mountains 3 valleys over. Dust and fire shot into the air. Landed on a high peak, his wings spread. He was excited. This was what he had been training them for. This was the moment they became real hunters, real killers. "You will go to the crash site," said, looking at the young dragons. "You will find any survivors and you will kill them. No hesitation, no mercy. This is your first true hunt. You will show me that my training has made you into dragons worthy of the kingdom." The group of 20 young dragons flew toward the smoke. Flew with them, though his left wing still burned with pain. He did not know what kind of species they would find. The elders had taught them about many alien races, the insectal, the silicon-based miners, the technological Vex, and dozens of others. All of them were enemies. All of them wanted to destroy dragon kind. The crash site was a chaos of twisted metal and broken machinery. Fires still burned in several sections. The stench of burned fuel and scorched stone filled the air. The young dragons landed and moved forward as a group. They had been trained to hunt like this in formation, coordinating their attacks. They had never actually hunted a living being before. They had trained on dead animals, on frozen prey, on statues that moved on mechanical systems. This was different. Lyra found the cave entrance first. It was dark inside, a simple hole in the mountainside. She stood at the entrance and growled low in her throat. "There," she said, "something is in there." The young dragons moved as one, was in the middle of the group. He could feel his broken bones moving, feel the weakness that said made him a failure. He was glad he was not at the front. They entered the cave. In the shadows, a shape moved. A creature unlike anything had ever seen. It had only 2 legs and no scales. Its skin was soft, tan-colored, and it wore torn pieces of fabric. It had no wings, no claws that looked effective. Its eyes were pale and weak-looking. It was small compared to even the young dragons. It was helpless. It was a human. The creature did not run. It did not attack. Instead, it slowly raised its hands, showing they were empty. It sat down. The cave was silent. All 20 young dragons stood frozen, their killing instincts locked in place by confusion. The human sat on the ground without moving, without showing fear. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. Prey ran or fought or tried to hide. Prey did not sit calmly and offer its own name. Lyra took another step forward. Her claws were out, her jaw opening to show her teeth. She was ready to end this. "Wait," Henry said. His voice was calm and steady, like he was speaking to friends instead of creatures that wanted to kill him. "I know you have been taught that I am your enemy. I know you believe I came here to hurt you. But I am wounded, I am alone, and I have no weapons. You can kill me right now if that is what you must do. But before you do, I ask one thing. Just listen to me." Something in his words stopped them. Not mercy. Dragons had been trained that mercy was a lie, but curiosity, perhaps, or something deeper that the Academy had not managed to train away completely. Was the first to sit down. His broken shoulder made the movement difficult, but he lowered himself to the stone floor like Henry had done. His action broke the moment. The other young dragons settled back too, though they remained tense, ready to attack if the human made one wrong move. Henry looked at them for a long time. His pale eyes moved from dragon to dragon, studying them. He seemed to be thinking about something important. "I was your age once," Henry finally said. "Not a dragon, of course. I was human, just like I am now. I was young and I was trained to kill. I was told that everyone who was not part of my group was dangerous, that they all wanted to destroy me and everyone I knew. I was taught that survival meant being faster, stronger, and more willing to hurt than anyone else." Lyra made a sound like a snort. "You are weak," she said. "You have no scales, you have no real claws, you have no fire in your belly, you cannot survive anything." Henry nodded, accepting her words without argument. "You are right," he said. "I am weaker than you in many ways, I am slower, I cannot fly. I will never be as strong as a dragon, but I survived 40 years as a soldier. I survived wars, explosions, diseases, starvation, and cruelty. I saw friends die. I killed enemies. I did all the things I was trained to do." He paused and looked directly at. "But I learned something that my trainers never taught me. I learned that the things they said about fear were backwards. They told us that fear was weakness, that we should be ashamed of fear, but they were lying to us. Fear is the first teacher," Henry continued, his voice becoming stronger. "Fear is the thing that teaches you to think instead of acting immediately. Fear is what tells your brain that something matters. When I was most afraid, I made my best decisions. When I stopped being afraid, I made terrible choices that got people killed." A younger dragon in the back spoke up. Her name was Iris, and she was only 7 seasons old. "The masters say fear means you will die. They say strong dragons do not know fear." Henry shook his head. The masters are wrong. I have killed beings that did not know fear. They were the most dangerous enemies I ever faced because fear was the only thing that could make them stop and think. Without fear, they did not consider consequences. They did not value anything except power, and that made them stupid. Lyra stood up. You speak lies, she said harshly. The masters have made us strong. They have prepared us for the galaxy. Without their training, we would be weak like you. Have they? Henry asked. He was not aggressive, just curious. Look at yourselves. You are children sitting in a cave with an old, wounded man who could not hurt any of you even if he wanted to. You outnumber me 20-1, and yet you are here listening to me. Why? If you truly believed I was your enemy, if you truly believed you were prepared to kill, you would have done it already. But you did not. Something made you stop and listen. What was that? Lyra had no answer. Henry waited patiently, and the young dragon sat in the darkness with only the distant sound of wind outside the cave. I had a daughter, Henry said quietly. Her name was, I was a soldier, and I did not see her for years at a time. When I came home, she did not recognize me. She was afraid of me because I was a stranger. I was so focused on being strong, on being ready for war, that I missed her growing up. I was so afraid of external enemies that I never noticed I was losing something I actually valued. He looked at his weathered hands. They shook slightly from his injuries and age. By the time I understood what I had lost, she was grown and had her own life. I missed everything, and I cannot get that time back. I spent 40 years being strong, but I was weak in the ways that actually mattered. I was weak at understanding other creatures. I was weak at seeing past the lies I had been taught. I was weak at having the courage to be different from what my trainers wanted me to be. Henry looked back at the dragons. If you kill me, you will be doing what you have been taught to do. You will be proving that your training works. But you will also be killing something you have never tried to understand. You will be proving that your masters are right, that there is no possibility of anything except endless fear and endless war. You will be becoming exactly what they want you to be. Over the next 3 days, Henry told the young dragons stories. He told them about human history, about species that had learned to live together instead of constantly destroying each other. He told them about choices and consequences. He told them about the difference between strength and power. Listened more carefully than any of them. The humans' words made sense in a way that nothing had ever said made sense. The Academy taught that the galaxy was dangerous and needed to be conquered. Henry was teaching something else entirely, that the galaxy could be understood. By the 3rd day, no dragons had returned to collect Henry. The crash site was isolated, and the debris field that surrounded it made it difficult for the masters to reach them. The young dragons had a choice to make. Lyra made it first. We do not return with him, she said. We tell the masters he was already dead when we arrived. We say we found no survivors. One by one, the other dragons agreed. Even those who did not fully believe in Henry's words could guess the lie was accepted without question. And the other masters believed that the human had been dead at the crash site. They accepted the young dragon's story because they had taught those dragons to be efficient killers, and efficient killers did not fail at simple tasks. The masters believed what they wanted to believe. But the lie came with a cost. Henry's wounds were worse than anyone realized. The infection that had started in his leg was spreading. His skin burned with fever. On the 4th night, he stopped eating and barely drank water. His breathing became shallow and irregular. Sat beside him in the hidden cave, a small alcove in the mountains where the young dragons had brought him, and watched the old human slip further away. I should have trained him to fight, Lyra said when she saw Henry's condition. They had moved him to this place together, taking turns carrying his unconscious body. Humans have stronger survival instincts than this. He is giving up. But understood something Lyra did not. Henry was not giving up. He was dying. The human body was weak in ways that dragon bodies were not. Humans could be broken by simple things: infection, pain, time. Henry had already lived longer than most humans in his position would have. His age was working against him now. We need to get him to the medical section of the academy, said another of the young dragons. He was practical, always focused on solutions. The masters have equipment that could save him. They have medicine and knowledge. They will capture him the moment we bring him into the academy, said quietly. He will be studied as a specimen. They will learn about humans, and then they will figure out how to kill more of us. Henry came here as an ambassador. Taking him to the academy would be betraying everything he said. The young dragons stood in silence. They had already betrayed their training by letting him live. Going further would mean actively defying everything their masters had taught them. It would mean stealing medical knowledge, stealing medicine, and using it for an enemy. It would mean choosing compassion over obedience. Lyra was the one who went to the Academy's medical archive first. She used her royal bloodline to access restricted sections. She human physiology data onto a crystal drive, information that was supposed to be classified, information that revealing would be considered treason. She brought it to the cave hidden in a cloth, so no one would see her carrying it. His infection is here, Lyra said, pointing at records of human bacterial infection. The liquid they use on this world is alkaline. A human body cannot process it. He needs something acidic. He needs clean water and something to kill the infection inside him. They found a stream several valleys over that ran through acidic mineral deposits. Young dragons took turns carrying water back to the cave in carved stone bowls. Spent hours crushing herbs that Lyra identified from the Academy's archives, mixing them with the water, trying to create something that matched the descriptions of ancient human medicines. Henry was burning from the inside. His fever reached a point where he stopped being conscious of anything around him. He spoke names that meant nothing to the young dragons, called out for people who were not there. He cried out for, repeating her name over and over until his voice became hoarse. The young dragons took turns staying with him. They did not do it because they understood human compassion. Most of them did not. They did it because did it, and had become a kind of leader among them without anyone officially deciding it should be that way. They did it because watching Henry die was harder than the punishment they would receive if they were caught helping him. On the 7th day of Henry's fever, Iris, the youngest dragon, came back to the cave with her scales scorched from flying through the heated air above the thermal vents. She had gone to the Academy and stolen an injection of antibiotics from the medical storage. It was a dangerous theft. If she had been caught, the punishment would have been severe. "I do not know why I did this," Iris said, trembling as she handed the injection to. "I do not understand what I am feeling, but I could not let him die." Took the injection and looked at Henry's burning body. The human was nothing to them by dragon standards. He was weak and foreign and everything they had been taught to despise. But he was also real in a way that the dragon's old teachings were not. He had shown them something that their masters had hidden, that other beings could have value beyond their usefulness or their threat. Injected Henry with the medicine. It was crude work. He did not know if the dosage was correct. He did not know if it would work on a human body, but it was all they could do. Henry's fever broke on the 9th day. His breathing deepened. His eyes opened briefly, lost and confused, and then closed again. But the shallow breathing pattern changed. His body was fighting back. The infection was being pushed back by the medicine and the care of young dragons who should have killed him from the start. Over the next days, Henry slowly became more conscious. He drank water. He tried to eat soft fruit that the young dragons brought. He spoke in whispers, asking where he was and what had happened. When he finally understood that the young dragons had stolen medicine from their own people to save his life, tears ran down his face. "You have risked everything," he said, his voice weak but clear. "You have risked punishment and expulsion from your society. You have done this for an enemy." "You are not an enemy," said simply. "You are someone we chose to save." Henry reached out a shaking hand and touched scaled face. His human touch was soft and fragile against the hardness of dragon scales. "Then I have not failed," Henry said. "I came here to teach one thing, that courage is not about being strong. Courage is about making the choice to protect something that matters, even when that choice costs you everything. You have learned this lesson better than I ever could have taught it." The young dragons understood something important in that moment. The masters had always taught them that strength meant being willing to hurt. But Henry had shown them that true strength was the opposite. True strength was being willing to sacrifice for another being. True strength was choosing mercy when power gave you the choice to destroy. The discovery came 14 days after Henry's fever broke. A patrol of senior dragons was conducting a routine search for traces of the crashed ship when they found the burned hull buried in a ravine. They examined it carefully, looking for evidence of survivors who might have escaped. What they found was evidence that someone had lived in the area for more than 2 weeks. They found water containers. They found the remains of eaten food. They found footprints that did not match any dragon species. The patrol brought the evidence back to the Academy. The masters questioned about his original report, questioned the young dragons who had carried out the initial hunt. The story that and the others had created began to crack under interrogation. By evening, Counselor arrived. Was ancient by dragon standards. He had lived for over 200 seasons. His scales were so dark they appeared almost black, and his wings were from countless battles. He led the High Council of Dragons, and his word was law. When arrived at the academy, all the younger dragons trembled. They knew that would not be satisfied with a story. He would find the truth. It took him 3 hours. The young dragons were brought into a chamber where waited alone. His size was overwhelming in the enclosed space. When he breathed, his chest expanded and filled half the room. His eyes burned with intelligence and cold certainty. "One of you will tell me what happened," said. His voice was like an earthquake. "Tell me now, or I will bring punishment that will teach all of dragonkind why dishonoring the council results in pain." Stepped forward, he was not the strongest, he was not the fastest, but he had started this decision and he would finish it. "The human did not die at the crash site," said clearly. "We found him alive and we chose to keep him alive instead of killing him as we were ordered. We lied to protect him. We take responsibility for this choice." Did not move. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient dragon turned and left the chamber without speaking. The young dragons were taken and placed in isolation cells. The academy locked them away and waited for the council's decision. Was kept separate from the others. His cell was small and dark. There was no window. There was only stone and the sound of echoing air. He did not know what would happen to him. He did not know if the punishment would be death or exile or something worse that he could not imagine. 3 days passed in complete isolation. Then the door opened and guards came to collect him. He was brought to a cave mouth that faced the eastern mountains. Henry was there, but he was no longer hidden. He stood in the open, and arranged in a circle around him were dozens of senior dragons. Stood at the highest point, his massive form blocking out the sky. "You have dishonored the kingdom," said, looking at and the other young dragons who had been brought to the cave. "You have protected an invader. You have stolen from the academy. You have lied to your masters. This is rebellion, and it will be punished according to the ancient laws." Moved to stand beside Henry. The young dragons formed a protective line in front of the old human. They had come here expecting death. At least they would face it together. But Henry stepped forward. His human body moved slowly, still weakened by his recent illness. He moved toward the wall of dragons that surrounded them, toward himself. "I am the one you should address," Henry said. His voice carried across the stone. "Not the young dragons. I am the intruder. I am the invader you taught them to fear. I am the one responsible for this situation." Looked down at Henry with something that might have been curiosity. "You are weak and you are dying," the ancient dragon said. "You are also insignificant, but you will serve as an example of what happens when dragonkind shows mercy to lesser species." "I have lived 40 years as a soldier," Henry said. His voice was steady despite his obvious fear. "I have fought in wars that killed millions. I have seen species destroyed because someone like you decided that strength meant dominance. I have buried friends and killed enemies and lived with the weight of every decision I made that cost someone their life." Henry looked up at directly. "I was taught that fear kept me alive. I was taught that mercy was weakness. I was taught that survival meant being willing to hurt anyone who threatened me, and every bit of that teaching was a lie that made me smaller, not larger." Moved his head slightly, indicating that Henry should continue. "The strongest moment of my life was the moment I chose not to kill an enemy I had captured. The most powerful thing I ever did was to forgive someone who tried to hurt me. The bravest choice I ever made was to admit that I was wrong about nearly everything I had been taught." Henry gestured toward the young dragons. These dragons made a choice based on something deeper than fear. They chose to protect something that their society told them was worthless. They risked everything for a being they had been taught to despise, and that took more real strength than anything in your entire military system. "You ask why I taught them this? Because fear is a terrible master. Fear tells you that everything is a threat. Fear tells you that safety comes from power. Fear lies to you every single day, and you never realize you are living by a lie." Stared down at the old human for a long time. The ancient dragon's breathing was slow and deliberate. "I could kill you now," said. "I could kill all of these young dragons. I could erase this moment from the kingdom's history, and no one would ever know that it happened." "You could," Henry agreed, "but you would still know. And you would know that you killed young dragons because they showed you something you did not want to believe, that your system is broken, that your fear-based training produces slaves, not strong warriors. Henry's voice became quieter. The real question is whether you have the strength to face that truth, whether you are brave enough to consider that everything you have built might be creating weakness instead of strength. Did not move for a long time. Then he turned and looked at the senior dragons that surrounded them. "Stand down," said quietly. The dragons hesitated, clearly not understanding the order, but was their leader, and his word was absolute. They moved back slowly, creating a path away from the cave. "You will remain here," said to Henry. "You will work with these young dragons. You will show us whether your way actually 3 months passed." The cave that had been a hidden sanctuary became an open school. Young dragons came voluntarily now, seeking out Henry and his strange human lessons. Word had spread through the academy, through the lower territories, that something was changing. The ancient ways were being questioned. The teachings about fear and dominance were being challenged. Not everyone accepted this. Some of the older instructors spoke openly about the decline of dragon strength. They said Henry was poison, that his words were corruption, that the kingdom would collapse if it moved away from the proven path of conquest and control. But the young dragons kept coming. Had become Henry's primary assistant. His shoulder had healed well, better than anyone expected. He no longer walked with pain. More importantly, his mind had changed in ways his body never could. He understood now that the masters had lied about what strength meant. He understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite fear. Henry sat on a stone platform at the cave entrance. His human body was growing older. The illness had taken something from him that would never fully return. But his mind was sharp, and his voice still carried the weight of 40 years of lived experience. "Tell me again," Henry said to a group of young dragons who ranged from 5 to 15 seasons old. "What makes a dragon strong?" A small red dragon named Petra answered first. "Teeth and claws and fire," she said, repeating what she had been taught in the academy. "Those are tools," Henry said, "but they are not strength. A dragon with perfect fangs but no discipline will die easily. A dragon with flames and fury but no planning will be defeated by someone who thinks first. Strength comes from understanding. Tell me something else. If you have the power to kill someone and you choose not to, are you weak?" The young dragons were silent. This was a question that the academy would never ask. The academy asked only whether you had won or lost, whether you had killed your enemy or been killed yourself. Lyra spoke. She came to Henry's lessons less often than, but she came. "If you choose not to kill someone, it could mean you are afraid," she said. "Or it could mean you see something worth preserving." "Yes," Henry said, "and which requires more strength, to destroy in anger, or to choose preservation in the face of an enemy who has done you harm." A teenage dragon named Owen made a low sound in his throat. "But what if they attack? What if they do not accept mercy?" "Then you defend yourself," Henry said simply. "Mercy is not stupidity. Protecting yourself is not cruelty. A dragon who shows compassion can still be fierce. The two are not opposites. A true warrior is one who can be gentle but is capable of being dangerous if needed. That is real strength." The lessons continued every day. Henry taught about human history, about the wars that had nearly destroyed the human species, and about the choices that eventually led to different ways of living. He talked about his daughter, and by talking about her, he made it clear that every species, every individual, had value beyond their function in a kingdom or an army. Counselor came to observe sometimes. The ancient dragon would perch on a high rock and listen. He did not speak. He did not approve or disapprove. He simply watched. After 2 months, called for a gathering in the great chamber of the academy. All dragon leadership was present, was there looking skeptical. The High Council sat in positions of power. Hundreds of older dragons filled the chamber. Stood and addressed them all. "Our kingdom has thrived on fear," said. His voice echoed through the stone chamber. "For generations, we have taught our young that strength comes from dominance. We have created soldiers, not thinkers. We have created weapons, not minds. And we have built a society that is strong on the outside but empty on the inside." There was movement among the dragons, discontent, disagreement. "I have observed the human Henry and the young dragons who chose to learn from him. I have seen something I did not expect. I have seen young dragons making choices based on understanding rather than instinct. I have seen compassion treated as strength instead of weakness, and they have not become soft. They have become more dangerous in ways that matter. Gestured toward the entrance where Henry stood, beside him. This human has shown us that our way, while effective for making soldiers, is insufficient for building a kingdom that will survive. A kingdom based only on fear is brittle. It will eventually break. But a kingdom where individuals can think, where they can choose mercy as well as power, where they understand that other species might have value and worth, such a kingdom could last forever. We will change our ways, declared. Not immediately, not all at once, but we will begin. We will teach the young dragons that strength takes many forms. We will teach them that mercy is not weakness. We will teach them that understanding other species is more valuable than constant warfare. And we will see if what this human has taught us is true, that true strength comes from wisdom, not from fear. The speech was met with mixed reactions. Some dragons roared approval. Others were silent, still unconvinced, but had spoken and his word was law. In the months that followed, young dragons who had learned from Henry began to be promoted into positions of teaching. They began to be given leadership responsibilities. The academy itself began to change, slowly but definitively, from a place of pure martial training to a place where young dragons learned to think. And Henry, the aging human who had crashed on Prime, became the most respected teacher in dragon history. One evening, as the twin suns set over the mountains, and Henry stood together on a cliff overlooking the valley, the dragon and the human, so different in every physical way, looked out at the kingdom that was beginning to transform. "I was terrified when we first met," said quietly. "I had been taught that you were something to be destroyed." "I was terrified too," Henry said. His voice was softer now, marked by age and experience. "I knew that if you decided to kill me, I could do nothing to stop you. I had to trust that somewhere inside you, beneath all the training, there was the capacity to see beyond your fear." "What happens now?" asked. Henry looked at the young dragon, his pale eyes reflecting the sunset. "Now you become what the next generation of your kingdom needs. You show them that fear was always the lie we told ourselves. You show them that compassion is the only thing that makes strength worth having. You become the bridge between what your people were and what they could be." Henry placed his weathered hand on scaled shoulder. "The lesson I came to teach was not really about compassion at all. It was about choice. Every being in this galaxy has the choice to be better than what they were taught to be. Every being has the choice to question the lies they were given. And every being has the strength to make that choice if they are brave enough." Looked at his friend. The old human was fatting. Time and illness and age were catching up to him now. But his eyes still burned with the clarity of a soldier who had finally found peace. "Will you stay?" asked. "As long as I can," Henry said. "And after that, what I taught will stay. What you learned will stay. Fear was your first teacher, but now you have learned the second lesson, hope. And hope is stronger than any weapon, any scale, any claw that has ever been forged." The two watched as other young dragons gathered on the cliffs around them. The dragons came because they wanted to hear Henry speak, because his words had shown them something beautiful. They came because they had learned that understanding was stronger than dominance. The wind carried Henry's voice across the mountains, and the young dragons of Prime listened. They had been taught fear. They had been trained as weapons. But now they were learning something else entirely. They were learning to be more than what their kingdom had made them. And in that learning, they would transform their entire civilization. The old human veteran stood on a cliff on an alien world, teaching creatures he had been taught to fear. And in that moment, he understood why he had survived 40 years of war. He had survived to come here to teach this lesson, to show that compassion was the ultimate strength. The dragon children who had known only fear had finally learned something greater. They had learned how to hope produces strength, or whether it is just another type of weakness. If you are right, the dragon kingdom will change. If you are wrong, we will end this experiment and return to our previous ways. It was not forgiveness, it was not acceptance, but it was the possibility of something different. And in a kingdom built on fear, possibility was more revolutionary than conquest. The academy would discover eventually that they had lied. The masters would learn that Henry lived, and when that moment came, there would be consequences. But not today. Today, the young dragons had made a choice, and that choice had changed them forever. That and many others did. The young dragons had made their first real decision. They would protect something instead of destroying it. They would trust someone they had been taught to fear. And everything that came after would be consequence. N on the stone floor, making itself smaller, and it looked at the young dragons with an expression none of them could read. "I am not your enemy," the human said in a voice that was old and tired. "My name is Henry, and I come in peace." Lyra stepped forward, ready to strike. The human did not move. He sat there, unarmed and trapped, and waited for the young dragons to decide his fate. Did not move. Something in the human's voice made him hesitate. It was not soft. It was not weak. It was something else, something he had never heard before.